There we go. What's up, YTPC? This is DSG Pipe Smoker with another pipe smoking video. I've got my Mario Grande olive wood pipe with some spectry in it. And, yeah, remember that video I was talking about where I was basically going to review my custom-built pipe? Yeah, that's going to take a little bit longer than I anticipated, because the more, let me move that smoke out of your face, the more I read about the custom-built line and the guy who created it, the more I realize that I don't really know that much about them, and I really have to do some digging before I can give a full review. But yeah, that's why there's a delay in that. So be patient, it will come. But in the meantime, I thought I would do a video on breaking in pipes and kind of the whole, well, the two major methods of breaking in a pipe and what my theories are regarding the two. But before we can talk about breaking in a pipe, we got to talk about what that basically means and why it's important. Breaking in a pipe basically means that you're developing what's called cake. It is a layer of carbon around the interior of the chamber of the pipe. That carbon comes from you burning the tobacco and the oils, the nicotine, everything that's made up of that tobacco will get deposited on the walls of the pipe, and over time it will build up. It will then protect the wood of the pipe. You know, usually it's briar, but in some cases it's a hardwood, like this olive wood. And like I said, it'll protect the pipe. Because yes, hardwood it's more fire resilient or heat resilient than, say, you know, a softer wood like cedar or birch, but it's still wood, it can still burn. Now, well, I guess I did kind of touch into why you should, you know, break in your pipe, kind of describing what it is. So, moving on from there, there are two basic methods by which people like to break in their pipes. The first one I like to refer to as the fractional method. In fact, I think I heard somebody mention that before, but I don't know if that's the official term for it. That's just what I call it. Again, I think I heard it from somebody, but anyway, the fractional method is where you basically smoke just a fraction of the bowl. Usually it's a third, sometimes it's a quarter, some people will even do a half, but the basic premise behind it is, or the basic theory behind it is, you will always smoke more in the first half of the chamber than you will the bottom half of the chamber. And therefore, your pipe will tend to have less carbon built up. Let's see if I can use this correctly as a prop. In the bottom portion of the chamber, and thus will be more more susceptible, that's the word I'm trying to say, more susceptible to burnouts. Basically where, you know, one spot of the pipe gets hot or the entire circumference of the tobacco pipe gets hot, and it causes scorch marks or literal burnout, where it'll burn from the inside of the chamber all the way to the outside. Excuse me one second, I gotta turn on my porch light here. It's a motion sensor kind of deal. There we go. So anyway, back to the fractional method. The obvious advantage to doing this, oh, I forgot to mention. So once you do that, once you've smoked, and everybody's different, some say, 3 bowls, some say 5, some say 10, or some will say, until you stop tasting briar, or in this case, olive wood. But once you're done with the bottom, then you move up a notch. So if you're doing, say, thirds, you go from doing 1/3 a bowl to 2/3, and you repeat the process until eventually you can do a full chamber. Now, the obvious advantage to doing that is you can cover the entire circumference of the pipe that way. And yeah, the people who say that that's the way to do it, they are correct in stating that usually most people, especially novices, and I'm no different in this regard, will tend to not smoke all the way down. So, unless you're using a fractional method to burn the tobacco all the way down, your pipe at the bottom of the chamber of the bowl will be relatively unprotected. That being said, there are some issues with it. At least I've noticed some issues. The first issue is if you're only smoking fractional sections of a chamber, that means that your flame, whether it's a match, a lighter, anything that you would typically use to light your tobacco pipe, well, that flame is coming in contact with the bare wood lining. The other problem that I have with it, and this is just a personal issue, I'm sure a lot of people don't have this issue, but I have a really hard time getting the entire circumference of the top of the tobacco to burn evenly when I'm only dealing with half or less of a bowl. And what tends to happen when I try to do it is I either have to get the middle of the tobacco lit and then let that burn down and then light it again and keep lighting it until I get the rest of the tobacco to burn, because it'll basically just draw from the center of the pipe. Or I have to basically fry and scorch the edge of my pipe in the name of getting the entire top layer of tobacco to burn using the fractional method. So those are some issues that I've noticed with doing that. That being said, I think some pipes need it, but not all pipes need it, which goes into the second method. The second most popular method is basically the method where you fill it all the way to the top and you smoke it like a regular pipe. Now, there are some caveats to doing this. Most people will, if they do this method, they'll make absolutely sure that they smoke all the way to the bottom of the bowl. If they have to make sure that they dump out the ash every time, or they set their pipe down to let it dry out so that they can smoke the rest of that pipe tobacco. Some people don't bother with it because they figure, well, 9 times out of 10 I'm not going to smoke all the way down to begin with, and as long as I keep my pace relatively slow, I shouldn't have issues with burnout in the bottom of the chamber. So, the obvious advantage to doing that is you don't really have to, you can just enjoy your pipe. It doesn't feel like you know, your pipe's not ready to be fully enjoyed when you're filling it all the way to the top. You know what I mean? You can just fill your pipe all the way to the top and light her up and go. You know, and then there's the other advantages of... Hold on a second. There we go. And then there's the other advantages of, you know, starting out with a full bowl. Basically, excuse me, it's closer to the surface of the pipe, so it's easier to light the entire circumference of the tobacco. And you don't have to subject the walls of the pipe to the flame as you're lighting it. That being said, I have noticed that unless a pipe is broken in, unless it does have that layer of cake, it will get a lot, the pipe will tend to collect more moisture on the bottom than if it did have a cake. I've noticed that that natural cake that gets formed tends to absorb a lot of moisture, and it really does keep the pipe dry. So that can, you know, be a real big hassle and a real big issue with getting your pipe, you know, broken in. And like I said, really, it just comes down to the pipe. There are some pipes that, as soon as I bought them, like for instance my Dr. Graybo. I have a Dr. Graybo Grand Duke, and when I bought it, I had no idea about proper break-in procedure. I just loaded it up and smoked it, and it's got a fairly thick, fairly even layer of cake, and out of all my pipes, it's the one that I have to keep in check and make sure that I remove the layer of carbon buildup around the chamber of the pipe the most. I also have, or I had, a Missouri Meerschaum Mini, and it didn't really develop a cake that fast, and obviously I didn't know what caking was at the time, so I wasn't really paying attention. I was just loading the pipe and smoking it, but I've noticed that it didn't really develop a cake too fast. Some corn cobs can be real hit and miss. One of my corn cobs has a pretty thick layer of carbon and I have to remove it. I got another corn cob pipe that isn't really developing cake, and I don't understand why. Maybe I'll bring them out and talk about them, but, you know, in a later video. But I just find that interesting, that one of them is developing cake quite heavily and the other one isn't. But, you know, and then you have the other issue of some pipes will coat the bowl with carbon in very odd patterns. Like it'll be just one side of the chamber. Trying to think of an example of a pipe that I have that's like that. The 320 I have is like that. I believe the Bulldog... No, the Bulldog pipe that I have is pretty evenly coated. The Artisan Apple that I have is like that, where it just kind of has this weird carbon built up. And pipes like that, honestly, they probably would have been better off with a fractional buildup because of how odd the carbon formation is on those pipes. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think that, like I said, it really depends on the pipe, and it depends on the pipe smoker as to which method is going to work best, and the only way you're going to find that out is by smoking it. Now, that being said, tobacco also plays a pretty big role in breaking in pipes. The number one most highly recommended blend type or genre of tobacco, from what I have read and from what I have seen on various YouTube videos, is burley-based tobacco. In fact, I think it was Classic Pipes who stated that Carter Hall, was it? Yeah, Carter Hall. He said Carter Hall was a really good blend to break in pipes, particularly corn cobs, because for some reason it's one of the better blends that just builds cake really fast. Probably has to do with the additives in it, since it's an over-the-counter blend. At least I think that's what he said, if I remember correctly. There's a moth running, or flying back and forth on my porch light. So, again, I apologize about the custom-built video not being put up. I want to put out quality videos for you guys, so that one's going to have to wait. And I've been extremely busy with 2 jobs right now, plus still doing some paperwork for the Army, and it's been quite a challenge trying to keep up with social media and YouTube. So, at any rate, I hope this video has been helpful. I hope it sparks some discussion. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just sharing my thoughts and my experiences on various things, and hoping to connect with people a little bit about it. So, if you guys have any other thoughts on the issue, please comment down below, like, share, and subscribe. This has been DSG Pipe Smoker with another pipe smoking video. You guys have a good day.